So my name is Chef AJ, and I have been following a plant-exclusive diet for 46 years. And I had the privilege of speaking at this wonderful conference last year. I did a PowerPoint presentation, which you can still see on their website. And when I was asked back, which I'm very thankful for, I said, well, you have all these wonderful educators and doctors telling people what to eat and why to eat it. What if I showed people how to make healthy, make delicious? And they agreed. So I'm going to demonstrate up to 10 recipes for you, depending on how much time we have and how fast they go. But I'm going to tell you the biggest secret is being prepared. Yes, I did go to culinary school 20 years ago, but I take a lot of shortcuts, either with equipment or buying some pre-chopped things. I'm going to show you all of that. And by the way, with the recipes, if you want them, I created a PDF. Just email me at help@chefaj.com and we'll be happy to send you this beautiful PDF. So when I'm saying the recipes, I'll say the ingredients, but I don't have the amounts memorized. The very first day of culinary school, we learned 3 words, and everyone needs to know these words because this will make your food preparation so much easier. And those words are mise en place. It's a French term that means everything in its place. And one of the reasons I'm able to do maybe more recipes than many other people that demonstrate recipes is I get everything gathered in advance, measured out, and all the recipes bunched together so that it's seamless. It's so much easier than running to the refrigerator, running to the cupboard, running to the pantry, trying to measure things on the fly. And it just makes cooking a lot easier. The other thing I suggest is batch cooking. So whenever I make a recipe, I usually double or triple it so that I have extras for leftovers, some to freeze, maybe even some to share. The recipes I'm going to be demonstrating for you today are some of the most popular recipes that I've created in the 4 books that I've written, and my personal favorites. And some of them have different steps so that you can mix and match and combine them in different ways. So I'm going to be making one of my favorite dishes that I serve to company. We have potlucks where I live now in Northern California. And this dish is always a crowd pleaser. And I love it because it's very easy to transport. And I call it Artichoke Polenta Pizza Bake because it tastes like pizza, but it's just much easier to make and to cut and to serve. And I'm going to show you the individual components, which can also be used for other things. And one of the components is a homemade marinara. Now, you certainly are welcome to take shortcuts because they do have several brands of marinara sauce now that are very healthy, that are vegan, that are oil-free. Some are even salt-free. But I also like to save money, and I've seen jars of marinara in the store, $6, $8, $9. This is a really inexpensive way to make one using a pressure cooker, so you don't have to stand there on the stove for hours and simmer and cut up onions. And so I'm going to be starting with water that I've already measured in my blender. This is a high-powered blender, but honestly, an $18 blender from Walmart would work just fine for this recipe. And then I'm going to add my ingredients. Sun-dried tomatoes. I don't use any oil, and so the sun-dried tomatoes I recommend you get are the ones that are completely dry, that don't have oil. They're sometimes hard to find without sulfites, so if you're sensitive to sulfites, maybe because you get migraines or asthma, there are brands that don't have them like Melissa's, but you have to read the labels. You can also make them yourself, believe it or not, if you have a machine that I have called a dehydrator. And when things like tomatoes are in season, it's a great time to buy them and make your own sun-dried tomatoes. I don't use any salt in my cooking, and sun-dried tomatoes give things such a depth of flavor when you're not using salt because it takes about 4 pounds of tomatoes to make a mere 3 ounces of sun-dried tomatoes. So I'm putting that in the blender with some ingredients that I've already measured out, some deadlet nor dates for sweetness. If you ever read a label of traditional jarred marinara sauce or pasta sauce or pizza sauce, it almost always has sugar. As a matter of fact, a half a cup of a traditional jarred marinara has more sugar than even 2 Oreos. So instead of sugar, anytime I need sweetness in a recipe, I use dates. And July 6th of this year, I'll be 20 years off of sugar, except for fruit, the whole fruit, nothing but the whole fruit. So I've got my dates for sweetness. I've got some apple cider vinegar to give it a sweet and sour flavor. And I've got my garlic. So oh gosh, I'm doing the wrong recipe. I'm so nervous. All right. Sorry, this recipe. Oh, well, see, even chefs make mistakes. Okay, luckily I can take that out. That's for the next recipe, the red lentil chili. And so what? A clove of garlic came in here. The world is not coming to an end. This is much easier because the marinara sauce pretty much has water, sun-dried tomatoes, a little bit of balsamic vinegar. This is what I'm using for sweetness instead of dates for this one, but you could use dates. And I'm using a good quality reduced brand for extra sweetness. And then I've got my spices already measured out. This is onion powder, garlic powder, a little bit of chili flakes, and Italian seasoning and basil. When I make recipes over and over, instead of measuring them each time, I put them in these little jars. I always smell it, make sure it's the right one, because you see I already made my first mistake. And, you know, there's no such thing as a mistake. The motto of my culinary school was, it's not what you can make, it's what you can fix. And then tomato paste. You know, depending on whether or not you get all organic, you can get a can of tomato paste for 69 cents. And so making your own is a lot cheaper than spending, you know, $8 or $9 on a jar of tomato sauce or tomato marinara sauce. So we're just going to put all these ingredients in the blender. You know, I have made traditional marinara sauce, you know, the way where you cut up the garlic and the onion and you saute it and you slow simmer it for hours. But by using a pressure cooker, I'm using the Instant Pot electric pressure cooker, it will taste like it's been simmering for hours without it taking hours. So I'm just going to puree this in the blender. That might have seemed like a long time, but it was exactly 20 seconds because my blender has a little timer on it. And you could technically eat this now. I mean, people make raw marinara all the time. And this would be, well, I guess it wouldn't be raw because you're using this ingredient, but by cooking it in the Instant Pot, it's going to give it a slow cooked feel. So I have one of my Instant Pots right here. This is the 3-quart. I think you're going to have to go around me. I'll turn it so you can see it. I love this little baby one. This is one I use every day. It can sit on the counter because it's so small. And I'm just going to pour my marinara sauce in there. And I'm going to cook it on high pressure for 10 minutes. Just push the plus sign up to 10. There we go. Just going to rinse out my blender real quick for the next recipe. And so I want you to understand that pressure cooking, it's not going to be 10. That little beep that you're hearing now is just my pressure cooker saying, is this correct? Yeah, it's correct. So it's not 10 minutes from this moment in time. It'll be 10 minutes from when it comes up to pressure. And that will be when it becomes about I think boiling is 212, pressure cooking, I believe is 247. It's a little bit higher. So what a pressure cooker does is it cooks things at very high heat for a short amount of time, which is the opposite of a slow cooker, which cooks things on low heat for a long amount of time. Now you could do this in a slow cooker, but then it's going to take 6 to 8 hours. The nice thing about electric pressure cookers, in my opinion, is you can set them and forget them. So if I wanted to take a bath right now, which obviously I don't want to do because I'm on with you, or walk my dog, you can do it, because what electric pressure cookers do is they shut themselves off when they're done to like a warming setting, and you could just tend to it whenever you want. So that's pretty cool. So the next recipe I'm also going to do in a pressure cooker, but instead of the 3-quart, which is the smallest size that I'm aware of, I'm going to do it in the 8-quart, which is my favorite size. I believe they also have a 10-quart now. I always recommend that when you buy anything in life, you get the biggest and best you can afford, because you can make a smaller recipe in a big pressure cooker, but you can't make a big recipe in a smaller pressure cooker. I'm going to be making red no lentil chili now, and I have the recipe written for the lentil version and the lentil-free version. So my red lentil chili recipe is one of my most popular recipes, and I probably get more thank you notes for that than any other recipe. It's really delicious. Well, one day I was making it and I had everything all ready to go, and I didn't have any lentils, and I don't live near a store anymore. So I thought, well, what could I substitute instead? So I'm going to show you what I substitute instead. And the thing is unless you had them side by side, when I brought this to potlucks, people think it's the original version. Now, we know there's some people that avoid legumes for whatever reason. I know, like at Passover, certain people of Jewish descent can't eat lentils, for example, over Passover. So this could be a reason to do it then, or some people just have digestive reasons. Also, if you saw the lecture I gave at the Real Truth About Health conference last year on calorie density, while lentils are very healthy and you should definitely eat as many legumes as you can, a 1-pound bag of lentils, which is what the recipe calls for, is 1,500 calories. but I'm going to be substituting something that's only 200. So for people that are trying to lower the caloric density of their meals or get in more vegetables, this is a great variation. So now what I'm going to do is put in what I mistakenly put into the marinara sauce, which is apple cider vinegar, dates, and garlic. And the dates and the apple cider vinegar gives it a sweet and sour effect to the chili. I've got my red bell pepper. There's 2 of them. A question I often get is, does it have to be organic? Well, again, buy the best you can afford. And if you can't afford organic, conventional produce is still better than organic animal products or processed food. There's a wonderful website, ewgenvironmentalworkinggroup.org, that will tell you which vegetables and fruits are the most important, or which food items to be organic and which aren't. So I always try, if it's on the dirty dozen, to get them organic whenever I can. And so I'm going to be putting in 2 cans of fire roasted tomatoes. I really like this brand. It's available. And by the way, everything that you're seeing me use, I think I got 1 thing at Trader Joe's and 1 thing at Walmart. I got at my local store, which is called Rayleigh's. So it's not like I try to use difficult to find or bizarre ingredients. So most stores do have fire roasted tomatoes. You can't always find salt-free where you live, but the Rayleigh's by me, they have it. And these are BPA-free cans. So again, I'm just making a puree with this. You can also buy these in bulk often at stores like Vitacost, Amazon sometimes get even better prices. And my tomato paste. So I'm just going to be pureeing this and adding it to a pressure cooker that already has 8 cups of water in it. So the spices, pretty much everything is the same for the lentil version and the no lentil version, except for what I'm going to be substituting for the lentils, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. And again, I do the same thing. I pre-measure my spices, and sometimes I'll do 12 in a row on a Sunday for recipes that I know I'm going to make over and over. For example, cauliflower bisque. Once again, I'm going to puree. I love the Blendtec, but one thing it doesn't have that the Vitamix does have is the tamper. So if that happens, you just have to stop it and mix it up a little. What I do love about the Blendtec is it's smaller, and I feel like it's very nice looking. But what I really love about it is it has the measurements that you can actually read very easily on the side. Whereas on the Vitamix, I just can't see where it says, 1 cup, 2 cup, or how many ounces. There's my puree. I just heated up this water in advance so it would cook a little faster, because that will make whatever you're making go a little bit faster. And then to that, I'm going to add my puree. And again, you can do this on the stove. I feel like you can buy pressure cookers now for as little as $39. The average price is about $69. And it just makes cooking so much easier and faster, in my opinion. I've never used a stovetop one, and I promise you these won't explode. I've been using these ever since I heard about them, which was probably 12 years ago. Wow, that means that what the beep you just heard, which means my marinara has already come up to pressure. So that means my sauce will be ready in 10 minutes. But if I'm not ready for it, I don't have to tend to it. And so now I'm going to put my spices in. I usually have these jars labeled, but I always smell it just to be sure, because one time I accidentally put the wrong thing in the wrong thing. I was making a rice pudding, which I'm hoping to make for you today, and it had cumin, and it was for a totally different recipe. My red onion. And things like onion, even red onion, you can buy in most stores already chopped, frozen, if you want to save time. I just prefer red onion in this recipe, or in general. I find it just has a little bit more flavor, but any kind of onion would be fine. So if I was making the regular red lentil version, I would add a 1 pound bag of red lentils. Now, people said, can I use green or brown lentils? You can, but it's not as good. I've tried it. It doesn't look as good. I really recommend the red ones because after all, it is called red lentil chili. So instead of a pound of red lentils, I have 2 pounds of riced cauliflower. Riced cauliflower is simply fresh cauliflower that's been riced. You can do this yourself using a food processor fitted with the S-blade. You can buy riced cauliflower now in almost every store. I've seen it at Walmart. You can get it both in the fresh and the freezer section. So I'm going to be putting this in. And then millet. Millet is a wonderful grain. A lot of people think of it as bird seed. And I actually live in a place now where I feed the birds, and they're eating me out of house and home. But I noticed that the feed always seems to contain millet in it. But millet has a wonderful, almost nutty flavor, and it's a whole grain. It's a gluten-free grain. And I'm just stirring this up a little. You probably don't have to, but I am. For people that, for whatever reason, are avoiding rice, it's wonderful, both savory or sweet. You can have it for breakfast. You can toast it first. And I think millet is just absolutely delicious. So I brought this to a potluck 2 weeks ago, and it was gone very quickly. And people didn't know it was cauliflower, and they just thought it was chili, which it is. All right. So now I'm going to, you can see why I needed the 8 quart, because you're going to follow me over there. If I use the 6 quart, it would not have fit, and I want to be making big batches of everything. So I'm just, when you put the lid on a pressure cooker, you just pretend it's in a pot, and then it goes on easily. And then I just use one button called pressure cook, and then I put it on the amount of minutes, which in this case is 10 minutes.